Shift Tab and Tab in Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab are super duper fab. I kind of stumbled across the Shift Tab, but it'll tell you all sorts of information about an object or a function, and how to use it and what things are. Another helpful thing is like who and who is, but first let's start with the difference between like Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab. So let me start by saying I'm not a computer scientist. This is not meant to be a tutorial. This is just a couple helpful things that I found as I am learning how to code in Python, just like basic stuff. One of the things that makes it a lot easier is using Jupyter Lab. So you might have heard Jupyter Notebook. These are these basic file format, and this like website, you run them on like in your browser, and you have these different cells, and you're running things as cells, and you can have markdown cells, you can have raw cells, you can have code cells, you then run the cells and you get output of the cells, all sorts of really cool things that makes it easy. There's still going to be a lot of things that you don't know and that you have trouble with, and there's some really great built-in ways that you can actually get help about various things. So say you have a function that, or a module, I don't know what these things are called, but basically, so if I want to know, okay, well, I want to make an array, what arguments do I need to put in? How does this work? And so if I do Shift Tab, this will then bring up the doc string for that, and tell me what I need to put inside, what I need to have, what are optional, what the defaults are, various parameters, and it also will give you some examples. So this is super duper helpful. You can also, once you've defined like a variable or something, so here I said, okay, I made this test string equals test2, and now if I went and I did Shift Tab, I would then get information that tells me, okay, this is a string, it has a length of 5, these are some properties of strings. If I go to my test list, well, now I can see that, well, I have a list, and it's in this form, this length, and et cetera, and with all these different types of files. Now I could, if I wanted to know the length of the list, I could also do like length of test list. And you can see here what I've done is I've done tab, because I've already run this, and so that I have a bunch of different things labeled test. If I do tab, it'll give me the options of the things that I already have, and if this was like a function, it would give me the options of the different ones. And so here I want to do test list, and it will tell me if I do Shift Enter, it'll run the cell and tell me it was 5. But it's a lot easier to go and just do Shift Tab and see all of that information here than to have to do like type to get the type and length to get the length. And say I wanted to know like all the variables I have described. This is really helpful thing, where if you do a %sign and then who, okay, now it's going to tell me all of these like variables that I have defined. What if I wanted a little more information? Well, then I can use who. So what if I want a little more information? So I'm just gonna, there are also keyboard shortcuts. So if I press B, I can get a new cell below. If you go to edit, you can see all these various shortcuts that you can use. A couple helpful ones are B, which will make a new cell below, as well as X, which will delete a cell. So what I can do is, if I wanted more information about this, so B, make a cell below. If I do who, oopsie, I do who, and if I do this who's, now it's going to Shift Enter to run. It's going to tell me more information about all of these different things. And so this can be really helpful. So this is like giving me like contextual information on the fly. So if I could do this for all of these different things and get information. If I wanted to like always have the information be readily available, what you can do is, if you can go to help and then show contextual help, or you can do command+I. And now it'll be like, it'll have this window over here as the side. And so then if you click on something, it'll give you the information about the various things that you made. And so this is a way that then it's a little more bulky, but it's always available. You can also get that if you go to the launcher, and then you'll see contextual help. So that brings us to this differences between like Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab. And so this was a Jupyter Notebook file that we were in. Jupyter Lab, it allows you to run Jupyter notebooks, but also it allows you to run like R code, terminal. I can open a terminal window. If you press this plus, you'll get taken to this launcher where you have these different options for making different files. And so I could actually make, if I wanted to make a text file, you can see that I made a text file here. So here I started this this lab session, type Jupyter Lab into my terminal from the folder where the directory where I was. So in my example code, and so I have access to all of the stuff in here. These are like cells, and then you also have the kernel, which is like what's actually like running things. And so right here I'm on this like Python 3 IPy kernel, but I can also have it run from different different kernels, such as my different conda environments on my computer. And so those are just a couple things. You can also, within the Jupyter Notebook, you can have different, there's a lot of ways to format things. So I showed how you could kind of get something over there on the side when we were talking about the contextual input. You can also arrange the different files and have multiple files open. If you want to have multiple views open of a file, like of this notebook, I can go to File and then go to New View for Notebook. Another really helpful thing is, so one of the nice things about Jupyter Notebooks is that you have these nice like block formats, and so you could run things by block. These numbers on the side are going to tell you the order in which you ran the various blocks. And then the things will like stay here, and you can actually have it stay when you have your format. Sometimes you have something that's really, really long. In this case, what you can do is enable scrolling for output. So this is already enabled, but if I disabled it, you can see this would be like the default, and then it would take up a lot of room on my console. If I enable scrolling, well, now I can just scroll it. If I want to collapse it, I can click on this sidebar and it'll collapse. You also have the option to render side by side, and this is going to put the results to the side rather than here. Yeah, so the shortcut for that would be Shift R. I've never actually used it like that. But anyway, it's an option that I just discovered earlier. Another thing that I have used, though, that I didn't know about until recently was that you can actually go to File and you can do New Console for Notebook. So now I have a console and I could be working within this, and it's going to know what is in this file because it's in like the same console, but I'm not having to make a new cell and write a new cell every time. It's just like if I were typing into a terminal. So we had that test string. If I run test string, it should know that it'll return what I have for the test string. And so this is a really helpful when you're trying to just play around, debug, various things like that. And you don't want to have to be doing it cell by cell in this manner, working more interactively in this way. If you have, speaking of like errors and debugging and stuff, say I had an error and I had like a parenthesis or a like a apostrophe, and I tried to run this. It would then give me an error because I have like just the single parentheses and stuff. And so it'll try to help you when you're figuring out what to do. Another way to get help on something is if you can also say I wanted help with who. I could run who ? And then it'll give me the docu string for that. Or as we saw before, I can just do Shift Tab and it'll give me it right here in this little pop-up window. Or if I wanted the contextual input, I can do command+I and get it right to the side. So those are just some helpful shortcuts. And if you forget the shortcuts, there, if you go to edit, you can see like all of these different shortcuts or the shortcuts on these various tabs. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different options and you can customize things. You can go to like advanced settings editor and edit things a lot more. Okay, more ways to get help because there's always help that you want. So if you go to the help tab, it'll actually have these different references. So if you wanted a reference to Jupyter Lab, if you wanted a reference, what I've used a lot is like these references for NumPy, as well as like pandas. So a couple that I've used a lot are these like, I don't know why it just like disappeared, my other things. Okay, so yeah, so help for like NumPy, for SciPy, for Matplotlib, for pandas. These are some things that are really helpful to have when you're trying to figure out how to do something. And also Google, like Google. Just a couple other things that come in really handy. So this is just kind of like convention that these are some of the programs that you're probably going to be using a lot if you are doing any sort of biological data analysis or just data analysis in general. So NumPy, this is going to allow you to work with like numbers, basically, to have like arrays, which are kind of like lists of numbers with these like special properties, and they can do this really fast math on it. So you typically import this package as NP. This is going to allow you to do like just use the abbreviation NP, and it'll know that if you do like NP dot something instead of having to write NumPy dot something, then you can, yeah, so like NP array dot array. This is saying, okay, use the NumPy program and the array function. And this would, I use it here to give me this like a range of numbers and in an array. And if I wanted pandas, the convention is to import pandas as PD. And similarly, I could use pandas pd.series, and this would give me, make a series out of my array. And so series, basically, these are like indexed arrays. So pandas is built on top of NumPy, but pandas is going to allow you to do more things in the deals. You can make like one of the main things about pandas is having these data frames, which are kind of like tables. So this would be like an Excel file type of thing. And then each of these columns would be like a pandas series. And so the series are like these indexed arrays. But this is all just technical stuff. But the important thing to know is that you'll use these a lot probably, and the convention is to import them as NP and PD. Then Matplotlib, this is going .plot. This is going to allow you to make really nice graphs and plots and stuff. And then Seaborn, this is going to allow you to make those plots and stuff using Matplotlib a lot easier and make things pretty. Then this Matplotlib inline, this is going to allow it so that when you graph something, it'll show up like right where you are. And so those are the basic things, these various formats. There's a lot of different things to learn when you are doing this, but these are just some of the things that can make it a lot easier. And yeah, so one thing too, so you can see that I have the other files I have in here. If you want to read in a file, you can easily read in a file into the notebook. You can also view things from within your Jupyter Lab. And so I could view this CSV file within Jupyter Lab. And if it was in like tab delimited or something, I can specify that here. Here, I'm not actually working with the data, I'm just kind of viewing it. You could also, if you had like an HTML file or if you had an image, you'd be able to view those in your console as well in the Jupyter Lab. What's really nice too is that you can read in CSV files or a lot of different types of files into your Jupyter Notebook. So say I want to read in this peptide play file so that I could work with it. If I don't remember, so say I want to make it a pandas data frame, which I remember was kind of like one of those like tables. And so PD, that was pandas, and so .read. And if I go to tab, it's going to show me all the different options. And so you can see that, okay, well, I can read in all these different formats. So if this was an Excel file, I could read in an XML file. If it was a pickle file, which is like one of these file formats that you can save really big tables in really small amount of space, I could read that in. I could read in all sorts of different things, but here I have a CSV. And so if I need to know, okay, how do I use this language? And again, I could use Shift Tab to get the information about how to read this. And in this case, I just need to, if I just want it simple, then I can just enter it in. And since I have it actually in my, it knows it was there, and then I could do this. And there are various things about that. And so, yeah, and so now I could play around with this data it's actually in here, but I didn't name it, so it doesn't know what it is. So if I do my pep df equals that, and now it's not going to show it because I didn't tell it to show it. But if I do pep df, a nice thing about these Jupyter notebooks is you don't have to actually write print, you can just do that and then it'll show you. And now I can play around with this data frame. And if I do shift tab, and now it knows that this is a data frame and it knows all this sorts of stuff about it, and it'll tell me what I can do with data frames and various things like that. And if I want even more information, then I could go to this pandas reference. And I'm doing all of this within my Jupyter Lab. And if I wanted to then make a new file, if I wanted to change to a different Conda environment, to a different kernel, which is like running everything, to a different one of these like virtual environments with different packages installed in these virtual environments so they don't conflict with one another, I could do that. And so basically there's a lot of different things that you could do, and I'm just scratching the surface and I'm just learning. But there are some really cool things that I have no clue how to do, and I'm looking forward to learning about them because it seems like there's some really helpful things. One thing too is that like if you can save, when you save, so command S, when you save, then it'll also set like a checkpoint. And so if I wanted to, I could revert to a checkpoint. So the last time I saved this was 30 minutes ago, and if I wanted to revert back to that, I could. And if I could also use like Git if I wanted to be making different checkpoints that I can actually go back further than just the one before. So this will just let me go by the one before. I can see the open tabs and the kernels that are open on my terminal sessions, as well as I'm not really sure what's in here, but this is like extensions, so you can put on different extensions. So I'm just playing around. So this one is like auto scroll cell output, which isn't what I thought it was. But I was hoping that it would be like auto scroll, so it would make it so that all of these would automatically be scrollable. If I wanted to make them all scrollable, you could do command A, and then I could go to enable scrolling for outputs, as well as just doing that on the individual ones. And yeah, but so you wouldn't always want them for that, all of them, but if you want them for some of them, then you can do that. And then you can also remember collapse by pressing over on the side and then expand it back out. But anyway, what this scroll thing is that if I have something that's really long, so I printed like I to 100, I can enable scrolling by right clicking and enabling scrolling. But if I were to run this, it would, right now I have it set on this scroll, so I have this extension enabled, so it's scrolling to the bottom. If I disable this and then I run it, now it's going to start at the top and you have to scroll down to the bottom. And so this is just an auto scroll extension that when I run it, it'll take me to the bottom automatically. And yeah, so those are just a couple of helpful things. And then also you have the line, like the run numbers over here. If you want to see your line numbers, there's also a option to show that. If you go to view, show line numbers, then you can see, I thought you could, I don't know why it's not showing me before now, but I've done it before where it would show me line numbers. Oh, it was. I just didn't see them. They're over here. And so this can be helpful when you're trying to like reference things or debug or that sort of thing. So yeah, so Jupyter Notebooks, Jupyter Lab is really, really helpful. And Google, and use that shift tab to get information, as well as tab to get all of the various options of things that you can break off from that point. And this is really helpful if you don't remember what your variables are. Remember, you could also do who and whose to get those variables, various things like that. They're also different. You can go, if you go to this little bug thing, it'll tell you about these various variables as well. There's all sorts of stuff. And like I said, I'm not exactly sure what everything is. But there's a lot to discover, and I'm excited to discover it because it's a lot more fun to actually be working on your own data and be learning to do stuff with your own data than just like test data, but it's still important to do that test data stuff. But there are a lot of different things here, and yeah, I'm just rambling now. And so I will leave some links to helpful sources that I found helpful that are a lot more helpful than me just rambling. But sometimes I find that hearing from a beginner what they found, stumbled across that's really helpful, can be helpful and more approachable, hopefully. And so hopefully this helps somebody. And if not, it'll be a source that I could look back on when I forget this stuff. And so hope it helped you.